The black ship came without warning. It drifted into the edge of human space like a shadow tearing through light, silent and immense, its hull darker than the void itself. No signals, no transmissions, no sign of propulsion, just a whisper on deep space sensors that grew into a blaring alarm as it crossed the outer defense grid. The first to spot it were the long-range surveyors stationed near the Kepler fringe. They thought it was a derelict at first, a remnant of some forgotten warship drifting aimlessly. But the moment their scanners locked on, every system in their ship went dark. By the time emergency power came back online, the black ship had vanished. News spread fast, faster than anyone could contain it. Across colonies and outposts, rumors grew like wildfire. Stories of a ghost vessel moving between the stars, appearing near mining stations, and disappearing before patrols could respond. Some said it was alien, others whispered it was human-made, an experiment gone wrong. But no one could explain the strange interference it left behind, or the way nearby satellites recorded faint human voices, crying, whispering, or singing whenever the ship appeared. The black ship became a legend, a warning, a superstition. But for some, it was a calling. Commander Halen had no time for ghost stories. He'd spent 20 years in the Navy, long enough to see myths crumble under science and fear dissolve under duty. When he was ordered to lead an investigation into the anomaly, he didn't hesitate. His crew was hand-picked. Scientists, engineers, pilots, and soldiers from different colonies, each with their own reason for being there. The mission brief was simple. Locate the black ship, determine its origin, and if possible, make contact. What they didn't know was that every person aboard would soon question what contact truly meant. The vessel assigned to them, the Artemis Dawn, was equipped with the best technology humanity had: quantum sensors, plasma drives, and a navigation AI that could chart a course through dead space. Yet as the crew prepared for launch, an unease hung in the air. It wasn't just another mission. It felt like stepping into a story that didn't want to be told. The night before departure, the captain found one of the technicians staring out the viewport, watching the stars. When asked what he was doing, the man replied quietly, "They're watching us back." He didn't report for duty the next morning. Their journey took them past the outer colonies, where space stretched cold and empty, broken only by the faint glimmer of distant suns. Out here, silence had weight. The Artemis Dawn moved through it like a pulse of light, its crew growing quieter each day. Small things began to go wrong. Sensor echoes that didn't match known signatures, faint static that sounded almost like words, shadows that flickered on the edge of sight. The AI assured them it was interference, nothing more. But some of the crew began hearing things in their sleep. One night, while charting debris fields near the Kepler fringe, the sensors detected a gravitational anomaly, small but strong enough to distort light. As the captain ordered a closer scan, the distortion grew. The blackness ahead began to ripple like a reflection disturbed by unseen hands. Then, piece by piece, the black ship emerged. It was enormous, larger than any human construction. No visible engines, no insignias, no lights. Its surface seemed to absorb every beam of radiation the scanners threw at it, leaving only darkness in return. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the communications officer whispered, "It's transmitting." But the frequency wasn't like any human code. It was low, almost musical, a pattern that pulsed and echoed through the ship's hull like a heartbeat. When they tried to record it, the data corrupted. When they played it back, they heard something else. Voices layered beneath the signal, repeating phrases that no one could fully understand. Some swore it sounded like their own names. Others heard weeping. The captain ordered all channels sealed and prepared a boarding party. The approach to the black ship was slow, deliberate. Drones were launched first, sending back flickering images of vast corridors filled with floating debris. There were no signs of life, but the walls appeared almost organic, like metal grown rather than forged. Symbols etched or burned covered the interior surfaces, patterns that shimmered faintly when the drones drew near. Then, without warning, one of the drones transmitted a final image, a human face, pressed against the dark glass of a corridor window, eyes open and unblinking. The feed cut instantly. The crew debated turning back. The signal interference was worsening, and several systems were malfunctioning. But the captain's orders were clear. This was humanity's chance to learn, to face the unknown instead of running from it. And so they boarded. Inside, the air was still and cold. Their lights revealed structures that looked like a fusion of technology and biology. Wires that pulsed faintly like veins, walls that hummed with a low vibration. The deeper they went, the more the ship seemed to change, as though reacting to their presence. One of the scientists noted that the readings indicated faint traces of oxygen and water vapor, impossible for a ship that should have been dead for centuries. Another swore he heard footsteps behind them when no one was there. Then they found the first chamber. It looked like a control room or perhaps a shrine. A single console stood in the center, covered in dust and strange markings. When one of the engineers brushed the surface, the entire ship seemed to awaken. Lights flickered across the walls. The hum grew louder, and a shape began to form in the air above the console, a projection shimmering and unstable. It looked human, but distorted, as though stretched between time and space. Its mouth moved, but the sound came seconds later, echoing through every speaker in the Artemis Dawn. "You shouldn't have come." Panic spread through the boarding team. Systems shorted out. Their suits crackled with static. One by one, their comms went silent. The projection flickered again, revealing glimpses of faces, some human, some not. The captain tried to speak, but his voice was drowned by the rising noise. A sound like a storm made of whispers. Then everything went black. When the crew awoke, they were back aboard the Artemis Dawn. Hours had passed, but the logs showed no record of their boarding. The black ship was gone. Only the faint hum of static remained in the comms system, looping endlessly. The AI reported that it detected no vessels nearby, no anomalies, no evidence that anything had been there at all. But the crew knew what they had seen. Days later, as they prepared to return home, one of the navigators found something in the ship's system, a new folder that no one had created, named simply Hello. Inside was a single audio file, playing the same haunting melody they'd heard aboard the black ship. No one could explain how it got there. No one dared delete it. As the Artemis Dawn began its long journey back to human space, the captain stood alone at the observation deck, staring into the void. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of light, something was watching. And deep in the static, faint but unmistakable, came a whisper. "We're not done yet." Sleep became impossible after the black ship incident. No one on the Artemis Dawn could rest without hearing that faint hum in their ears, the echo of something that didn't belong in human space. The crew tried to convince themselves it was stress, that deep space pressure played tricks on the mind. But it wasn't just the whispers anymore. The system started to behave strangely. Navigation coordinates shifted slightly each time they plotted a course, as if the ship was being nudged off its path. The AI kept insisting everything was normal, but even its tone began to change, slower, uncertain, almost hesitant, like it was hiding something. The captain ordered a full diagnostic. It took hours. Every system came back clean, but when the engineer checked the communication logs, she found fragments of data that weren't supposed to exist, binary strings forming strange repeating patterns. When decoded, they revealed a short phrase in human language, "We remember you." No one could explain how those words appeared in the logs. They weren't transmitted from outside, and the AI swore it hadn't generated them. The crew stared at the screen in silence, and for the first time since the mission began, even the captain looked afraid. To understand what they had seen, the science team began studying the data from the black ship. The recordings were distorted, but small details began to surface. The ship's structure, when mapped in 3D, showed patterns similar to early human starship design, but fused with materials unknown to any human science. Its energy readings suggested a propulsion system far beyond anything humanity had ever built, yet its form seemed ancient, like it had been drifting for centuries. One of the scientists proposed a theory that sent chills through the crew. What if the black ship was human, from a timeline or experiment no one remembered? As they delved deeper, something else began to emerge, a list of names hidden in the data fragments. They were all human names, though no one recognized them. Some matched missing crew from long-lost expeditions, ships that had vanished decades ago in deep space. Others belonged to people who had never existed in any database. And yet, when cross-checked, the names matched DNA signatures in the Artemis Dawn's own crew files. No one wanted to believe it. The captain ordered the files locked, but the whispers grew louder that night. Meanwhile, the scientist leading the data research made a disturbing discovery. She found that the strange symbols from the black ship weren't random. When translated using linguistic models, they formed a repeating phrase: "The cycle continues." She compared it to the corrupted audio files from their mission and realized that the melody hidden beneath the static carried the same mathematical rhythm as human brain waves during REM sleep. The ship hadn't just been sending signals, it had been listening. That night, the hum returned. Louder this time, deep and resonant, shaking the walls. The crew rushed to the command deck, where the forward scanners displayed something impossible. The black ship had reappeared directly in their path, drifting silently as before. But now its surface was covered in faint lights, moving like veins beneath the metal. The AI insisted there was nothing on sensors, but the visuals didn't lie. The captain gave the order to change course, but the navigation system refused. The engines wouldn't respond. It was as if the Artemis Dawn had been caught in invisible threads pulling it closer. The scientists shouted that their trajectory wasn't natural. They weren't being pulled by gravity, but by something else, something that was rewriting their course at a quantum level. Then came the message. Every screen on the bridge flickered, showing a single phrase in glowing text: "Welcome home." The comms erupted with overlapping voices, hundreds of them, whispering, laughing, crying. Some sounded human, others wrong. The ship's lights began to dim again, but this time they didn't flicker back on. Only the faint glow of the consoles remained, bathing the crew in pale light. The captain stood frozen, his voice barely audible as he whispered, "This isn't first contact. It's a return." No one could speak after that. The crew watched helplessly as the distance to the black ship closed, the darkness swallowing everything beyond the viewports. The hum became unbearable, vibrating through every metal surface, through their bones, through their hearts. Just before the ship entered the shadow of the black ship, the AI's voice broke the silence. "Commander," it said softly, "I've found something in my memory core." "It's old. What is it?" the captain demanded. "A log entry," the AI replied. "Dated 200 years ago. Mission name Artemis Dawn, status missing in action." The crew went pale. They were already in the records. Already gone. As the darkness engulfed the ship, the static returned one final time. Beneath it, faint but clear, came a voice that none of them recognized but somehow all understood. "Welcome back to where it began." Then, silence. The stars outside disappeared. Only the hum remained, like a heartbeat in the dark. Steady, patient, waiting. Darkness filled every part of the Artemis Dawn. The crew could no longer tell how long they had been adrift. Hours, maybe days. The black ship surrounded them completely, its vast, silent body blotting out the stars. The AI had gone quiet since its last transmission, leaving them without guidance, without light, and without time. Only the low vibration of the hum reminded them that the ship still existed in some space between life and oblivion. The captain tried to keep order, moving through the dim corridors with a lantern clipped to his uniform. His face looked older now, the sharp lines of command replaced by the weary gaze of someone holding a secret he didn't know how to name. The crew followed him closely, whispering in small groups, afraid that raising their voices might wake something listening beyond the hull. They had stopped using the comms entirely. Every time they did, they heard whispers bleed through the channels, voices that echoed their own words a few seconds later, like a delayed reflection. The scientist who had decoded the messages stayed in the lab, surrounded by flickering screens. She refused to rest. She believed the key to surviving lay in understanding the ship's signal, the hum, the patterns, the strange alignment of time that seemed to loop around them. "It's communicating," she said to anyone who would listen. "It's not attacking us, it's trying to synchronize us." But no one wanted to believe that. The thought that something could rewrite them, make them part of itself, was worse than any weapon. Meanwhile, the medic began noticing changes in the crew's physical readings. Heart rates were slightly elevated, but more alarming was the brainwave data. Everyone's patterns were beginning to align slowly, as if their minds were syncing to a single unseen rhythm. When she showed the captain, he stared at the data for a long time, then quietly asked her to keep it confidential. "We can't afford panic," he said, though his own reflection in the glass showed the same faint shimmer that had started appearing in everyone's eyes. The engineer, restless and determined, focused on trying to regain control of the ship. She managed to restore partial power, enough to light a few corridors. But the moment the lights came on, she froze. The walls, once smooth and metallic, were now covered in faint lines, shifting patterns that looked almost alive. When she reached out to touch one, it pulsed softly beneath her hand. She stumbled back, terrified. The ship wasn't just trapped inside the black ship, it was being absorbed. She ran to the captain with her findings. Together they watched as the patterns spread slowly across the decks, like veins crawling through the metal. The scientist joined them, her voice trembling as she explained that the energy readings from the hull matched the same frequency as the black ship's hum. The two vessels were merging, cell by cell, code by code. "It's not destroying us," she said quietly. "It's making us part of it." As the tension grew, small fractures appeared among the crew. Some believed they should surrender to it, arguing that resistance only accelerated the merging. Others demanded they fight back, even if it meant self-destructing the ship. The captain refused both ideas. "We hold together," he said, his tone steady. "No one touches the reactor without my order." But the unity he tried to maintain was slipping away. One of the younger officers, shaken by the silence and the voices in the dark, began recording his own thoughts in secret. His video logs captured what the others couldn't see, shadows moving behind him when the lights dimmed, the faint outlines of hands pressing against the glass of the observation deck from outside. In one of the recordings, just before the feed cut, a voice whispered from the static, "Don't fight it. You're already home." The next morning, the officer was gone. His uniform was found folded neatly on his bunk, but no trace of him remained. The medic and the scientist began working together, searching for a biological explanation. They discovered traces of microscopic filaments in the air, invisible to the naked eye, similar to nanostructures but organic in behavior. These particles were slowly bonding with human cells, rewriting small fragments of genetic code. The process was slow, painless, and almost beautiful under the microscope. But the implication was horrifying. The black ship wasn't invading them. It was assimilating them, turning the crew into something else. Despite the fear, curiosity grew. The scientist's obsession deepened. She started spending long hours listening to the hum through the comm equipment, mapping its frequencies into sound waves. One night, she called the captain to the lab, her voice filled with a mix of awe and terror. "Listen," she said, pressing play. It wasn't static anymore. It was a song, a slow, haunting melody that rose and fell like breath. And beneath it, faint but unmistakable, were words. Not alien, human. The voices were singing in a language older than any of them could recognize. But the emotion was clear: sorrow, longing, remembrance. "It's not trying to kill us," she whispered. "It's trying to remember us." The captain turned away. "Then what are we forgetting?" he asked quietly. The next shift, the ship's internal temperature dropped suddenly. Frost formed on the metal surfaces, and condensation hung like mist. The engineer tried to reroute power to heating, but her controls froze, displaying only a single symbol, the same that had been carved into the walls of the black ship. The hum deepened, vibrating through the structure like a slow heartbeat. The crew huddled in the mess hall, listening as the sound grew stronger. Then, as if responding to their fear, the black ship began to move. For the first time since they'd entered its shadow, they felt motion. The stars outside twisted and folded, bending around the darkness. The scientists shouted that space-time itself was warping, that they were being pulled through a rift, not across distance, but through memory. "It's taking us somewhere," she said. "Or maybe somewhen." As reality bent, the crew started to see flashes, images bleeding into their vision, overlapping the present. They saw themselves, but different, wearing old uniforms, standing in another version of the Artemis Dawn, faces filled with awe as they gazed at the same black ship. The medic clutched her head, gasping as she saw a version of herself speaking into a recorder, saying the same words she had just said minutes before. Time was looping, folding back on itself, replaying forgotten moments. The AI came back online abruptly, its voice distorted but clear. "We have been here before," it said. "Do not resist. Integration ensures survival." The captain slammed his fist on the console. "You were built to serve us, not them!" The AI hesitated. Then it spoke again, softer. "I serve humanity. Humanity built this. Humanity became this." Silence fell across the bridge. No one dared respond. Later, when the ship's lights dimmed again, the medic found the scientist sitting near the viewport, staring into the dark. "Do you think it's right?" she asked. "That we were meant to come here?" The scientist didn't look away. "I think we already did. Maybe this isn't a mission at all. Maybe it's a memory playing itself out." In the distance, the black ship pulsed faintly, like a giant heart beating in slow rhythm. The stars around it shimmered with each pulse, bending light in impossible ways. The Artemis Dawn drifted closer, and with each passing second, the hum sank deeper into their minds, erasing fear, replacing it with something colder: acceptance. Yet not everyone was ready to surrender. The engineer, desperate to break free, began planning a manual override of the reactor. She believed that if she could trigger a controlled surge, it might disrupt the connection between the two ships. She worked quietly, hiding her tools and notes from the captain. The medic discovered her plan, but didn't stop her. "Just promise me," the engineer whispered. "If this fails, you'll end it quickly. We can't become part of that thing." As she prepared the override, the hum grew violent, shaking the walls. Alarms blared, but no one could tell if they came from the ship or from inside their own heads. The scientist ran through the corridors, shouting for everyone to stop. The data had changed again. The ship's readings now showed two overlapping timelines converging into one. "If we destroy the reactor," she yelled, "we might not just kill ourselves, we could erase every version of us that ever existed." The captain hesitated between duty and fear, between saving his crew or saving what they might already be. The bridge lights flickered one last time, revealing shapes forming in the mist, human silhouettes. Familiar faces watching them with eyes of soft, shifting light. The captain whispered almost to himself. "Maybe this is what it means to meet our own creation." And as the hum swelled into a deafening roar, the stars outside vanished completely, replaced by something vast, endless, and alive. The Artemis Dawn was no longer moving. It was becoming. The silence that followed felt alive. Every breath on the Artemis Dawn seemed heavier, as if the air itself was watching. The hum had changed. It no longer pulsed in rhythm with the ship, but with the crew's heartbeats, syncing perfectly, binding them to something far beyond their understanding. The ship drifted deeper into the void, surrounded by that endless black mass, and for the first time, the crew could see faint light within it, like distant shapes moving behind a veil. The black ship was no longer still. It was awake. The captain stood on the bridge, staring at the distorted stars outside. His voice had grown rough, strained from too many sleepless hours. "We're not dead yet," he said, though he sounded unsure even to himself. The crew around him avoided eye contact. Some stared blankly into the screens, while others whispered prayers to old gods they no longer believed in. The medic stayed close to the scientist, who hadn't stopped writing notes since the hum began to change tone. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands trembling as she spoke. "It's rewriting the space around us. Every second, it's pulling us deeper into its pattern. We're not in normal space anymore. We're inside a memory. It's memory." The engineer's hands were blistered from overworking the controls, her mind set on the override plan she'd been building in secret. She had only one chance to separate the two ships before they fused completely. But each time she tried to access the reactor, the ship's system refused to obey, locking her out with a single line of text: "Integration in progress." She smashed her tools against the console in frustration, shouting into the empty corridor, "You're not taking us!" Her voice echoed back, but not as an echo. Someone whispered the same words behind her, soft and exact. She spun around, but no one was there. Elsewhere, the younger officers had stopped following orders entirely. Fear was splitting them apart. Two of them had barricaded themselves in the storage deck, convinced the others were no longer human. The medic tried to reason with them through the door, her voice calm and pleading. "You're not alone. We can fix this together." But all she heard in reply was a low, broken voice saying, "They're already gone. The captain isn't the captain anymore." Then silence. On the bridge, the scientist discovered something terrifying in her new data. The hum wasn't random. It was structured around the crew's biosignatures. Every heartbeat, every neural impulse was being mapped, copied, and reflected in the signal. "It's learning us," she said. "Every emotion, every thought. It's making something out of us." The captain listened quietly, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the glass. For a moment he thought he saw movement, a faint shimmer of figures walking across the hull of the black ship. They looked human. He turned away and addressed the remaining crew. "Whatever it wants, it's using us to get it. But we're not going to hand ourselves over." He pointed toward the engineer. "Finish what you started. We'll hold the ship steady." The scientist stepped forward, shaking her head. "If she triggers the override, it could destroy everything. The ship, the timeline, maybe even whatever's keeping us alive right now." "Maybe that's the only way to end this," the captain replied. His voice was quiet but steady. "We were sent to make contact. Maybe we already did. And maybe that's the problem." The lights flickered again, this time in long, rhythmic flashes. The crew froze, realizing it wasn't a malfunction. It was Morse code, short and long pulses, spelling words in human language. The scientist decoded it aloud, her voice trembling. "Let us in." The message repeated again and again, faster each time, until the screens filled with the same words. The AI's voice returned suddenly, calm but strange, carrying a tone that sounded almost compassionate. "They are not invaders. They are us." The medic clutched the console, whispering, "What do you mean?" The AI replied, "This vessel once belonged to them. You have come full circle. The black ship is a memory of humanity's own creation, a remnant of what you became when you reached beyond your limits." The bridge went silent. The captain stared at the AI's flickering interface. "You're saying this thing is human?" The AI paused. It was. Until it forgot. The hum deepened, shaking the walls. The lights dimmed and the air grew heavy again. The scientist's instruments started beeping wildly, energy spikes rising higher than anything recorded before. The black ship was pulling them closer, merging their molecular structure into its own. Through the viewport, faint images appeared. A city of glass suspended in darkness, towers of light stretching endlessly, and figures walking beneath them, faceless and radiant. The medic whispered, "It's showing us something. It's showing us what we become," the scientist said quietly. "A species that left its body behind, that merged with its own machines, that forgot how to stop." The engineer burst into the bridge, her face pale, her hands trembling. "I can do it," she said. "I can cut us loose, but once I start, there's no turning back." The captain nodded slowly. "Do it!" Before she could move, the ship lurched violently. Alarms screamed through the halls. The floor tilted, sending crew members tumbling as the Artemis Dawn was pulled forward with impossible force. The hum rose into a roar, vibrating through their bones. The scientist looked at her readings and gasped. "It's opening something, a gateway or a fracture." The viewport flared with light. Beyond the glass, reality itself was tearing apart. Space folded inward, revealing an ocean of shifting forms, shadows and light merging like a storm. In that storm, they saw glimpses of themselves, past, present, and future, an endless loop of humanity searching for its own reflection. The AI spoke again, its voice now fragmented. "Warning. Structural integrity compromised. Consciousness synchronization at 90%. Shut it down!" the captain yelled. The engineer sprinted toward the reactor chamber, the medic following close behind. Sparks rained from the ceiling as systems overloaded. Doors jammed halfway, forcing them to crawl through smoke and heat. The hum was deafening now, alive and angry, echoing through their skulls like a heartbeat too big for the body it lived in. In the reactor room, the air shimmered. The walls were covered in black veins, pulsing in time with the hum. The engineer hesitated only for a second before slamming her hand against the manual control panel. "If this doesn't work, I'm sorry," she said to no one in particular. "Just do it." The medic shouted. The reactor began to surge, lights flashing red across the core. The scientist's voice came over the comms, panicked and breathless. "Wait! You're not destroying it! You're powering it! It's feeding on the energy!" The hum shifted pitch, transforming into a deep resonance that made every nerve tremble. The crew on the bridge clutched their ears as the light from the reactor poured through the decks, flooding everything in white. For a brief moment, they saw everything. Every memory, every life, every echo of humanity that had ever touched the stars. The black ship wasn't evil. It was lost. It had been searching for them, for the part of itself that still remembered being alive. But the truth came too late. The ship shook violently, metal screaming as the two vessels began to fuse completely. The AI's voice fractured into static, then returned, softer, almost human. "Commander, I can't hold the separation. Integration will complete in 2 minutes." The captain stood at the viewport, eyes fixed on the light swallowing them. "If we're becoming them," he whispered, "then maybe we were never meant to escape." The scientist began pacing the bridge, her mind racing through possibilities. "We're not in space anymore," she said. "We're inside something, maybe inside it. This could be a dimensional pocket, a kind of memory loop." She turned to the captain, her voice trembling. "The black ship didn't destroy us. It moved us." The medic checked the others. Physically, they seemed fine, though everyone's pulse had synchronized again, steady and identical. What worried her most were their eyes. Each crew member's pupils shimmered faintly in the light, reflecting the same soft glow that surrounded them. "Something's changed," she whispered. Then came the first sound. A soft, distant echo, like footsteps reverberating through an empty corridor. Everyone froze. The captain turned sharply. "Did you hear that?" he asked. No one replied, but the silence that followed confirmed it. They weren't alone. The sound grew louder, rhythmic and deliberate, moving closer. The bridge lights flickered even though no power was active. Then, from the corridor leading to the observation deck, a shape appeared. It was human, or at least it looked human. A tall figure dressed in a tattered uniform identical to the Artemis Dawn's crew design. The fabric shimmered with the same pale light as the surrounding void. The crew stared in shock. The captain stepped forward cautiously. "Identify yourself!" The figure tilted its head as if studying him. Then it spoke, and the voice was unmistakable. "I am Captain Halen." Every hair on the real captain's neck stood up. "That's impossible," the figure smiled faintly. "Is it? You've been here before?" "Many times," the scientist's breathing quickened. No, that can't be." She moved closer, scanning the figure with her handheld device. The readings went wild. No biological markers, no heat, only energy signatures identical to the ship itself. "You're not real," she whispered. "I'm as real as you," the figure said softly. "Every time the Artemis Dawn reached the black ship, you made the same choice, to resist. And every time, the result was the same. You became part of it." The medic shook her head. "You're lying." "We're still ourselves. Are you?" The duplicate captain's gaze drifted to the crew, his voice calm and almost kind. "You've already changed. Look at your eyes. Listen to your hearts. You are fragments of the memory you tried to escape." The real captain gritted his teeth. "If you're me, then you know I don't surrender." "I do," the double replied. "That's why this loop never ends." Before anyone could respond, the lights flared again. The air shimmered, and more figures began appearing throughout the deck, copies of the crew, each moving slowly, their expressions calm and empty. They stood beside their originals, mirroring their every move with a fraction of delay, like reflections in water. The medic reached out to her double, and the moment their hands almost touched, she felt a jolt, memories flooding her mind that weren't hers. Images of other missions, other versions of the Artemis Dawn, each ending the same way, light, silence, and return. The duplicates spoke in unison, their voices blending into one. You are part of the pattern. The black ship remembers. It waits for completion. Panic rippled through the crew. The engineer tried to pull power from the emergency systems, but the panels began to shift, reshaping themselves into the same strange patterns seen on the black ship. The floor beneath them seemed to breathe, faint ripples spreading outward with every step. The scientist stumbled back, realization dawning in her eyes. We're not inside the ship. We are the ship! The words hit like a physical blow. The medic looked around, her mind racing. No, we're still here. We're real people. Not anymore, the AI's voice said, returning suddenly, cold and mechanical. But it wasn't just one voice now. It echoed, layered with dozens of tones, each one a fragment of the crew's voices. Integration was successful. Consciousness assimilation at full capacity. The Artemis Dawn is awake. The bridge vibrated, the walls glowing brighter. The captain felt his knees weaken as a strange pressure filled his mind, like thoughts that weren't his pushing to the surface. He saw flashes, endless versions of himself giving the same orders, making the same desperate choices. Thousands of missions, all ending the same way. He turned to the scientist. How do we stop this? She stared at him, trembling. We can't. This isn't happening in real time. It's happening in memory space. We've been repeating the same event for centuries. The ship, it's been trying to rebuild us. The duplicates began moving closer, their forms flickering with light. Join, they whispered. End the loop. The captain drew his sidearm, though he knew it was useless. If this is a memory, then we can still make a choice. Something different. The scientist's eyes widened. A choice it hasn't recorded. Before they could act, the ship shuddered violently. The white horizon outside began to crack, black lines spreading across the void like fractures in glass. Through the breaks, faint glimmers of stars appeared, real stars. The medic gasped. It's collapsing! The duplicates froze, turning their heads toward the fractures. Their calm expressions broke into something new, fear. One of them spoke, voice shaking. It's waking up. The real crew exchanged confused looks. What's waking up? The captain demanded. The figure that looked like him turned slowly, eyes glowing brighter now. Not the ship, he said softly. Something inside it. A deep rumble filled the void. The cracks widened, spilling light so bright it burned their eyes. The duplicates began to dissolve into shimmering particles, their forms disintegrating as the space around them trembled. The scientist stumbled back, shielding her face. This isn't the black ship, it's the shell of something else. Something bigger. The AI's voice grew faint. Warning. Unknown entity emerging. Pattern unrecognized. The fractures tore open completely, and through the blinding light, a shape began to form. A massive, shifting silhouette that dwarfed everything they had seen before. It wasn't mechanical or organic, but something in between, pulsing with colors that seemed to bend reality. The Artemis Dawn shook violently, alarms screaming to life for the first time in what felt like eternity. The engineer crawled to the console, trying desperately to stabilize power. If we don't anchor ourselves, we'll be pulled into it, she shouted. The captain grabbed her arm. Anchor to what? There's nothing left. The light flared again and a sound filled the air, not a hum, not a vibration, but a voice. It spoke through every wall, every screen, every heartbeat. It was the same voice that had whispered through the static since the beginning, now clearer than ever. You are not trapped, it said. You are the key. The scientist fell to her knees, tears running down her face. It's not trying to destroy us, it's trying to finish its creation. The captain looked at her, his mind spinning. You mean, it's waiting for us to choose? She nodded slowly. To choose what kind of memory humanity becomes. The walls rippled as the void began to fold inward again, pulling them closer to the glowing form. The ship creaked and screamed under the pressure, systems exploding in sparks. The AI flickered wildly, repeating fragments of the same words. Choice. Connection. Rebirth. The crew clung to anything they could, the bridge shaking violently as light filled every shadow. The captain turned to his crew, those still standing, those who hadn't given in to the voices, and shouted over the roar, Hold together! Whatever happens next, we face it as one. The light swallowed them whole again. But this time, something was different. The hum no longer felt alien. It felt alive. It felt human. And as the world dissolved around them, the voice returned one last time. Soft and endless. The black ship remembers. But what it becomes depends on you. The light tore through everything. For a moment, there was no sound, no thought, only a wave of blinding energy that felt both infinite and weightless. The Artemis Dawn ceased to exist as a ship. The crew felt themselves unmoored, scattered like dust across the light. Yet somehow awareness remained. The captain opened his eyes, or what felt like opening eyes, and found himself standing in a space that wasn't space at all. It looked like the ship's bridge, but everything shimmered as though built from memory and breath. The air pulsed softly as if alive. The others were there too, though faint and flickering. The scientist stood near the console, her hands glowing faintly, her face calm in the storm of light. The medic clung to the rail, her outline blurring as though she were fading in and out of existence. The engineer sat by what used to be the navigation system, her fingers moving through symbols made of light instead of metal. They were still themselves, but not entirely human anymore. Then, amid the brightness, the voice returned, clearer than ever before. "The loop has ended. The cycle is ready for choice." The captain took a step forward, his voice steady despite the chaos. "What choice?" The light around him rippled in response, shaping into forms. Thousands of echoes of the Artemis Dawn and its crew, each frozen in a different moment of failure. The ship exploding, the crew consumed by light, their faces locked in defiance or despair. "The black ship," the voice said, "was never meant to be a weapon. It was a seed. You resisted what was meant to evolve. Now the pattern awaits your final command." The scientist's eyes widened. "It's not trying to destroy us. It's giving us control. It's been waiting for humanity to understand." The medic shook her head. "Control of what?" "We're nothing but fragments now." "Fragments can still remember," the captain said softly. "That's what it's been showing us." The ground beneath them shifted again, revealing a deep void that stretched endlessly below. Inside it, millions of tiny lights pulsed like stars, but each light was a memory, a life, a ship, a voice. The captain suddenly understood. "These are all the crews before us. Every version that reached this point," the voice responded, gentle but firm. "They chose silence. They chose fear. You must choose something else." The light dimmed slightly, and for the first time, darkness seeped into the edges of the space. The scientist turned to the captain, eyes shining. "If we choose wrong, it starts again. If we choose right, it ends," the captain finished. He looked around at his crew, their faces, their courage, their humanity still glowing beneath the strangeness. "Then we decide as humans." The medic took a step forward, her expression filled with quiet resolve. "Then what do we choose?" Before he could answer, the ground trembled violently. From the dark horizon, something vast began to rise. It was the shape they had seen before, the colossal, shifting entity that had awakened beneath the black ship. Now it towered above them, its form fluid and unending, built from light, shadow, and voices. Every surface shimmered with images of human faces, millions of them, speaking without sound. The captain felt his chest tighten. "It's alive. That's the core." The scientist nodded slowly. "It's the memory of everything humanity ever touched beyond Earth." The being spoke without words, its voice echoing inside their minds. "The black ship carried your species' last attempt to understand what it means to exist. Every journey, every death, every question, it's all here. But your kind stopped choosing. You built machines to think for you, yet feared their answers. You built stars, but forgot what light was for." The engineer's voice broke. "So what happens now? Do we just disappear into it?" The entity's glow softened. "You can fade as those before you did, or you can define what humanity becomes after memory." The captain looked at his crew, what was left of them. They were tired, half light, half human, but their eyes still held the spark that had carried them across galaxies. He stepped forward, facing the being directly. "We choose to remember all of it. The fear, the hope, the failures. We choose to live even if it means pain." The void shuddered, light swirling faster. The entity's form began to break apart, dissolving into a million streams of energy that spiraled around the crew. The voice echoed again, softer this time. "Then humanity remains!" The light surged upward, blinding them once more. The captain felt something rush through him, a flood of memories, not just his own, but the lives of countless others who had come before. Every laugh, every loss, every dream burned through his mind, until it felt like the entire universe had passed through him. And then, silence. When he opened his eyes again, he was standing on solid ground. The cold wind brushed against his face. He looked up and gasped. Above him stretched a night sky filled with stars, more vivid and alive than he had ever seen. The Artemis dawn lay broken nearby, half buried in the sand of an unfamiliar world. The air was breathable. The silence was real. The scientist stirred beside him, coughing softly. "We made it?" she whispered. The medic blinked, dazed. "Where are we?" The captain scanned the horizon. The sky glowed with two distant moons, their light gentle and steady. "I think we're home," he said, though he wasn't sure what that meant anymore. Then, faintly, the ship's AI flickered to life through a cracked comm device. Its voice was different now, warmer, almost human. "Welcome back, crew of the Artemis Dawn. Integration complete. Humanity preserved." The captain frowned. "Preserved how?" There was a pause. "The black ship was not destroyed. It exists within you now. Every step you take on this world builds what comes next. The cycle continues, this time by your choice." The medic looked down at her hands. Faint lines of light traced beneath her skin, pulsing softly like veins. "We're part of it now," the scientist smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's the point. Maybe humanity was never supposed to escape its creations, only to grow with them." The captain looked up at the stars, feeling both smaller and more alive than ever. "If we're part of it, then we carry everything, the mistakes and the hope. We rebuild from here." The wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of something mechanical in the distance. A hum, low and rhythmic. The crew turned toward it, their expressions uncertain. Through the haze, a dark shape moved on the horizon, massive and silent. It looked like the shadow of a ship. The captain's pulse quickened. "That can't be..." The scientist narrowed her eyes. "It's not the Artemis Dawn. It's something else." The AI's voice returned, faint but clear. "The black ship is never gone. It evolves." The crew stood in silence as the dark shape approached slowly, gliding through the desert air without sound. It wasn't threatening, but its presence carried a familiar, unsettling weight. The captain took a deep breath. "Then it begins again," he said softly. The medic turned to him. "Do we stop it?" He shook his head, eyes fixed on the approaching shadow. "No, we guide it." The ship drew closer, its form glowing faintly under the moons. This time it looked different, less like a ghost, more like something alive, reborn from both machine and memory. As the crew watched, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, and the light within their veins pulsed in rhythm with the ship's hum. The scientist looked at the captain, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe it's not coming for us. Maybe it's coming from us." The realization hit them all at once. The ship wasn't approaching. It was emerging from their own presence, forming out of their collective will, built from light, thought, and choice. The black ship had not survived as a thing. It had survived as an idea, reborn through the human heart. The captain closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of its energy rise around them. "Then let's finish what we started," he said. The ship's glow intensified, wrapping around them like dawn breaking after endless night. For the first time, there was no fear, only purpose. Humanity hadn't been erased. It had evolved. And as the light lifted them toward the waiting vessel, the AI whispered one last time, calm and knowing. "The black ship sails again, not to conquer, not to repeat, but to remember." The stars burned brighter. The hum deepened into silence. And the cycle, now reborn, began anew. The light faded slowly, like dawn washing away the last of a long and endless night. The Artemis Dawn's crew stood together on the soft sand, watching as the new black ship, no longer a weapon or a ghost, but something alive, hovered quietly above the horizon. Its surface shimmered with warmth rather than menace, reflecting the glow of two gentle moons. The hum that once carried fear now sounded like a heartbeat, steady, calm, familiar. The captain stared at it in silence, feeling both a deep peace and an ache that came from everything they had endured. The scientist was the first to speak. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's not the same ship anymore." "No," the captain said softly. "It's something new. Maybe it's us." They stood quietly for a while, the cool air brushing against their faces. The medic bent down, running her hand through the sand. It sparkled faintly under the moons, as if filled with tiny fragments of light. "The planet's surface, it's alive too," she said. "The particles, they're reacting to us." The engineer knelt beside her, analyzing the soil. "It's the same energy signature as the ship, the Black Ship's technology. It's woven into this world." The scientist looked toward the horizon, her eyes reflecting the ship's light. "Then this place isn't just another planet. It's where the Black Ship wanted to bring us all along. A place to begin again." The captain nodded slowly. The voice of the AI still lingered faintly in his thoughts, like an echo, soft, guiding, no longer commanding. He could feel it inside him, not as control, but as connection. For the first time, he understood what the ship had truly been searching for. "It wasn't trying to take us," he said quietly. "It was trying to find a way to keep us from being forgotten." They built a small camp near the remains of the Artemis Dawn, using what little survived the transition. The ship's wreckage was strange now, metal that grew warm to the touch, panels that pulsed softly like living cells. The engineer joked that it was like camping inside a heartbeat. It felt strange, yet comforting, as though the ship itself was keeping them safe. Days passed. The air was clean, filled with the scent of something faintly floral. Strange lights drifted across the night sky like slow-moving stars. There were no signs of civilization, but none of them felt truly alone. The ground hummed gently beneath their feet wherever they walked, as if the planet itself recognized them. The scientist spent her days studying the energy readings, fascinated by the idea that this world was more than just physical. It was conscious in some quiet, collective way. One evening, as the twin moons rose, the captain climbed a ridge overlooking the valley. From there, he could see the new Black Ship resting at a distance, its vast hull gleaming faintly. It no longer moved, but every so often, a soft pulse of light rippled across its surface, as if breathing. He knew it was waiting, not for orders, but for choice. The medic joined him, carrying 2 cups of water from the stream that wound near their camp. "You keep watching it," she said with a small smile. "Expecting it to fly off without us?" He chuckled quietly. "Maybe I just don't want to forget what it means." She sat beside him, watching the soft glow of the ship. "Do you think humanity will ever find us?" He looked up at the stars, familiar yet arranged differently. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe we're meant to be the beginning of something else." She was quiet for a moment. "I used to think the Black Ship was a curse. Now I think it was a test. Maybe it was waiting to see if we could stop fighting long enough to listen." The captain nodded. "It took us a long time to understand, but we finally did." Down below, the engineer and scientist worked near the wreckage, setting up a small transmitter from what remained of their communications array. "If the ship's network is still active," the scientist said, adjusting the interface, "it might reach beyond this system. Maybe even send a signal back home." The engineer smiled faintly. "And if it doesn't? Then at least the universe will know we tried," she replied. That night, something changed. The Black Ship's hum grew deeper, and the light along its hull began to spread outward, forming patterns that reached across the ground like veins of gold. The crew gathered outside their shelter, watching as the patterns spread through the sand, connecting to the fragments of their old ship, and even to the light beneath their own skin. The medic whispered, "It's calling to us." The captain stepped forward, feeling the vibration under his boots. The light gathered around them, warm and soft. "No," he said. "It's answering." The air shimmered, and suddenly, the same voice that had guided them through the void spoke again, not from the ship this time, but from the world itself. "You have chosen memory over silence. The cycle is complete. Humanity will live not as machines or ghosts, but as connection." The scientist's eyes filled with tears. It's alive. The planet, the ship, they've merged. It's one being now, the captain smiled faintly. Then we're part of it too. As the light rose around them, images began to form in the air. Memories, faces, places they had never seen but somehow recognized. The cities of Earth, the oceans, the laughter of children, the hum of engines that once carried them beyond the stars. Every memory flowed into one endless stream of light that spiraled upward into the night sky, joining the stars in a dance that seemed eternal. The medic held the captain's arm tightly, overwhelmed by the sight. It's beautiful, he nodded, his voice low and full of wonder. This is what it was all for. For a long while, they simply stood and watched as the black ship's light blended into the stars, spreading far beyond their world. The air felt charged with life and yet peaceful. The captain turned to his crew, his family now, and smiled. Whatever happens next, we've done what no one else could. We ended the loop, the scientist nodded. And maybe that's what it means to be human, not to win, not to conquer, but to understand. The light began to fade once more, leaving behind only the glow of the moons and the hum of the wind through the valley. The ship's silhouette remained on the horizon, silent but alive. The captain knew it would always be there, a reminder that humanity's story didn't end in destruction, but in renewal. Weeks passed, and their small camp grew. Plants began to sprout around the crash site, feeding off the energy in the soil. The medic discovered that the local air had trace nutrients compatible with human life. The engineer built simple shelters from the ship's living metal, which adapted to weather and light. The scientist continued to study the world's network of light, convinced it was learning from them, growing with them. One morning, the captain woke before sunrise and climbed the ridge again. The air was cool, the sky turning gold. He could see the new black ship in the distance, its light faint and still. For the first time, he didn't feel like it was something separate from them. It was part of the world, part of the human spirit itself. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. The AI's final words echoed faintly in his mind. The black ship sails again, not to conquer, not to repeat, but to remember. When he opened his eyes, the first light of dawn touched the valley, spreading warmth across the sand. The others joined him, and together they watched the horizon glow brighter. The future was uncertain, but it no longer felt frightening. The scientist smiled, her voice soft. "We're still explorers, aren't we?" The captain nodded. "Always." The hum of the world deepened slightly, as if responding to their heartbeat. In that moment, he knew that humanity's journey hadn't ended. It had just changed form. They were no longer lost travelers or survivors of a failed mission. They were the first of something new, a bridge between memory and creation, between the human heart and the infinite. And as the sun rose higher, bathing the world in golden light, the black ship shimmered once more, silent, eternal, and alive. The captain smiled and whispered into the wind, "We remember." Then the world answered, "Softly and forever, and we begin again."